Hello and welcome to Eyewitness News. These are special broadcasts coming to you from Nasrec. My name is Tshidi, Madia, Associate Editor for Politics. We're at Nasrec, as I said, where the ANC is holding its 55th National Conference. Here, new leaders will be elected. It will relook at its policies and adopt a way towards the 2024 elections and beyond. Joining me at the moment is the presidential spokesperson, Vincent Magwenya. Thank you so much for joining me. Part of the conversation is about the leader at the helm of the ANC, as some want him to come back and serve a second term. Just as somebody who speaks on behalf of the president, what are his thoughts about this particular moment? We've even dealt with things that have happened over the past few hours. What are his thoughts at this particular moment, including the fact that, there are members of the ANC who want him to come back?
Well, his thoughts are, for purposes of today, focused on his political report, delivering his political report, which will be a combination of reflecting over the last 4 years or so of his term, at the same time giving a sense of the way forward, particularly with regard to the institutional reforms, recapacitating the state, coming out of those horrible years of state capture and corruption, pressing ahead with the economic reforms, which are beginning to bear fruits. We just saw the slight uptick on the GDP numbers, which is very encouraging. And again, sustaining the momentum in the fight against corruption. So he's in good spirit. He looks forward to a positive outcome out of this conference that will have positive effects for the country as well as for the organization.
He spoke last night pretty much about how difficult the tenure this has been. Of course, you can't take away moments like COVID, the floods. You can't take away the fact that there was a July unrest in 2021. What are his thoughts about the difficulty of this term of office? I imagine in that political overview, you'll speak about the difficulty not only of the organization, but also being at the helm of the organization, as it also faced a lot of electoral decline following the local government elections in 2021.
I think what is important when you reflect on those difficulties, and something that he does more often, is the learnings and the lessons that we took out of those moments in terms of how we manage the pandemic, for example. We came out with some massive lessons there. The debacle with PPEs compared to how we manage the procurement of vaccines, for example, there's an enormous lesson there. If you look at what happened in KZN with the unrest and the opportunity to reshape and reconfigure security forces flowing out of the Mendi Africa report. So there've been opportunities out of those crisis moments, which the president will reflect on. And those are the opportunities that we need to sustain going forward. With respect to the governing party, even though that's not my area, I think for all of us, either as ordinary members or just observers, the renewal project has gained significant momentum. If you look at how the governing party, for example, has chosen to deal with individuals that are facing corruption charges. So that project is underway and it will continue post this conference.
There is obviously conversations around Pala Pala. Just your reflections on what feels like a public sentiment towards a president who seems to think that we almost make a big deal out of it, bigger than it should be. I mean, I watched some of his comments as ANC president quite recently saying that people should relax. He has taken the matter to the Constitutional Court on review. Just the assessment really on this issue that feels like an albatross to some, but a non-issue to others.
No, he has not been underplaying the seriousness of the issue. Hence, he has committed himself to due process. On the other hand, it is, in all fairness and with all due respect, an issue that should not take up a lot of our energies. We have far more serious challenges to deal with. As you know, at a very high level, he was a victim of a crime. There are various issues that are under dispute, which are being investigated. Let us wait for those issues to be investigated. But insofar as the president is concerned, is not distracted by the issues related to his farm, neither is it distracted by the due process, except to cooperate with those processes.
So the thing about political space is that people wear many, many, many hats. Vincent similarly has this position that he holds in his official capacity, and you see that on social media. But he also has his own social media account, if I'm correct. And I just want to read this tweet to you, and I want to speak to you a little bit about it. So you post after the action, the statement from the former President Jacob Zuma's foundation about the private prosecution that they want to pursue against the president. And then you post, we are well beyond the realms of political contestation. We are now facing an all-out war that is inspired by deep-seated personal hatred, seeking to burn everything and anything on its path. Even the country will not be spared from the wrath of such hatred. This came, I think, after that statement was put out. Can you just connect the views that you put on your personal account versus what we saw happening with regards to the former president? Is it fair to say there's a connection between your views and that statement?
So, so we released a statement with respect to that private prosecution, which communicates the sort of official position of the president in that regard. However, the timing of this private prosecution is a bit troubling. The nature of it is equally troubling because it's outside of the parameters of private prosecutions. For example, we do not have the non-prosecution certificate. We've seen two other versions circulating in online platforms. The matter was attended to as best as the president could attend to. There seems to be an expectation that the president should have interfered with the work of the NPA. President Ramaphosa will not do that. We've been down that path. We do not want to return the country to a path where executive authority feels entitled to interfere and undermine institutions of our democracy that we can no longer afford. And so the whole thing is circumspect, the charges are spurious, and the timing is completely off at such a critical time in the calendar of the governing party, at such a critical time in terms of where we are as a country with all the challenges we are faced with. And so I used the metaphor in that tweet. It does give a sense that we are beyond political contestation. Now the man is being played. And that's a little bit distasteful if you consider what we should be focusing our energies on. Former President Zuma is an elder statesman. That's the role that the president expects him to play. He doesn't expect him to be involved in the daily machinations of politics. And that whole action and the timing of it does come across as part of those sort of silly season machinations that you find in politics or antics. Yeah.
And on your part, though, one would make an argument that your office is also a high office and one that commands so much respectability that you must stay above the fray as the mouthpiece of the head of state. And one would make an argument that the comment that you made on social media is entering the fray. In fact, they'd go beyond that and say Lindo Institute has accused you of also throwing yourself in the fray once again. How must we make sense of Vincent and his views versus what we think is expected of you as the mouthpiece of the national office?
No, there's no Vincent entering the fray. So if we go back to the comments I made when I was asked about the criticism that the president was facing from some of his cabinet ministers, there was nothing wrong with that comment. The principle of it is that there's a professional relationship. If there are concerns in that professional relationship, those concerns must be addressed within the necessary decorum that guides that relationship. To then go and shout at your colleague or your boss in this case from the rooftops is wholly inappropriate. And I stand by those comments that I made at that time. I don't think there was anything out of line in that regard. I was being asked about criticism coming from ministers to a head of state. And that's my ambit of performance, if you like. With respect to the tweet I put out last night, it was an observation. And it's an observation that I stand by. I don't see anything inappropriate in that regard. The issues that are being raised with that private prosecution relate to the president as head of state, right? And those issues are being raised in wrong manner. And it is, as we called it out, a abuse of processes. And if you take one look at that summary, you will be very disappointed when you find that it is hopelessly substandard and we're still waiting for the certificate, and we're hoping that there will be some regard that's given to the law rather than political expediency as it looks at the moment.
All right, thank you so much. I'm going to leave it there. That's Vincent Magwenya, presidential spokesperson, speaking about what to expect in that political report that's going to be delivered sometime today, as well as just the back and forth we saw playing itself outside last night, with former President Jacob Zuma seeking private prosecution. I still say, though, if you say there's an all-out war at play, when did the war begin? I believe political players long sacrificed the country's interests at the altar of political diplomacy. Thank you so much. Catch us later.